Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, or evening, depending on where in the world you are. This is Carrie Getz, and we're here with another episode of our podcast series. And today, we are lucky enough to have Mr. Kirk Offel. He's a good friend of mine from the industry, who is the CEO of Overwatch, and also has started this really great kind of alternative event in the industry called DCAC there in Austin. So, Kirk, welcome. Thank you for your service. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, thanks, Carrie. It's great to talk with you, and it's an honor to talk with you, actually. So first, let me start by simply saying congratulations on your new book. Can't wait to get that book in the hands of everyone that we have on our team. And you know that we have a huge push into trying to have a stronger reach and a bigger impact on the veteran community. So that book, I think, is going to really give us the best opportunity to hand something to them that they can read that'll help them better understand the impact that they one day can make in the space. So a little bit about me. Is that what the question was?
Sure. Yep.
You got it. Well, I'm speaking to you today from Austin, Texas, which is not only where I live, but it's the worldwide headquarters, we say, of Overwatch Mission Critical. So Overwatch was started almost 3 years ago, and we launched DCAC at the 7x24 event 3 years ago, Desert Ridge in Phoenix. So it's amazing to see how far we've come in those first 3 years. We're sitting between 50, 60 employees right now, and just growing. I mean, the industry's offered us a lot of opportunities for growth, but our mission as a business was, from the day we started, all of our backgrounds are data center focused. So our mission as a business was to help our clients unleash emerging technologies that change and improve the lives of everyone around the world. And we build these on-ramps or homes for the cloud, they call it, right? And that gives us the opportunity to really address what Dean calls the existential threat of the industry, which is the lack of professional labor to support the pent-up demand or the adoption rate of emerging technology. So we know if we took all of our experience in the mission critical space and we applied it to creating this platform called Overwatch Mission Critical, what we'd be able to do is create more voids and more opportunities that we could use to backfill with transitioning veterans. Because although our mission is focused on the data center space, our purpose as a business is really to reduce the suicide rate within the veteran community. And we feel like the only way that we could do that is to go out and help find opportunities for veterans to where they have purpose, not just a purpose, but a meaningful purpose of significance that allows them to, be significant in a role within this space while bringing all of the skills and life lessons they gain from joining the military. In many cases, they're trained on advanced weapons and machinery and technology, and they work in, really heavily conditioned and purposely built, strong, healthy cultures that are, predicated on a selfless nature. So having, highly energetic and highly trained people that are used to having jobs that include, protecting those that they work with up to and including the cost of their own life, we realize that they have a lot to contribute to culture from a leadership perspective. Our industry doesn't lack genius or intelligence. It really lacks in courage and leadership. And we could find that through the military. And when we transition these veterans out, it allows us to also contribute to the diversification of the industry, not just in veterans, but in bringing on female veterans as well. And I know that, jumpstarting the careers of women and people in trades and veterans is a big part of your focus as well. So that's why I'm super excited to be on your podcast, and I'm really excited to have you on ours one day.
So let's talk about this. Let's talk about where you started in the military. So, Branch, what'd you do?
Yeah, I was lucky enough. I'm the youngest of a bunch of boys. I have a brother in every branch. My father's career. So my father turned 18 in Vietnam, loading bombs on F4s.
Oh, wow.
He came out of the Air Force 24 years later as a lieutenant colonel. He had thousands of hours in the cockpit of a couple different platforms, but he spent a lot of his time flying B-52s. And then he moved us around, to bases that were accretive to his career growth. And then when we got into wrestling, he left the cockpit in the Air Force and got into industry, it's called. So that's back during the genesis of the GPS program. So in the mid 80s to late 80s, my dad ran that program for the Department of Defense when GPS was still just a military application. It was used for military only. Right now, it's so prevalent we can find it everywhere. It's in your phone, right? But I left high school where I was a wrestler like the rest of my lineage, and by then all my brothers were either active duty or at an academy. My father was active duty. Actually, I went to college and tried to wrestle for a few years and realized that college wasn't for me. And one day I woke up and discovered I'm going to go into the Navy. I knew I was going to be in the Navy. I just thought I would go.
Oh, my husband's a Navy man.
I went down a different path. I wanted to get into the submarine community. So I ended up I took a technical rate and went to, a bunch of technical schools, and then ended up on a fast attack submarine station in New London, Connecticut. And it was the USS Memphis, the SSN 691, the home of the Prowlers of the Deep, they call it. And then I was lucky. I was deployed I think it was 288 days a year on average. So I was gone all the time. And really that's why I joined. I didn't do it to sit at port, right? I wanted to go and explore the world. So I got to go see, I think in the military, I saw 18 different countries, and I did med runs and Northern Ice Pack runs and counter drug interdictions. And I didn't get out of the military because I didn't like it. I just got out because I felt like, hey, this party was over, and, I could stay in, but I'd probably just do a lot more of the same. And life is short, and I wanted to go and explore other things. So I got out of the military, and I literally stumbled into this industry by accident. I just got
didn't we all, right?
I am so fascinated by how people get into this, because it's a very niche emerging industry that's still in its infancy. And a lot of people, even within this space, don't know how to describe what they do, let alone what a data center is. So
my daughter will tell you I do some kind of junk with computers. My grandkids will tell you I work for the CIA because of all the travel. They just were absolutely convinced that I work for the CIA.
I'm still convinced. I'm not convinced you're not.
You're not allowed to say.
I can neither confirm or deny.
Right. But I do think that, there's some parallels there. I mean, certainly the travel is a big thing, right? In the military, you do a lot of travel, same thing here. And I think the discipline and a lot of the skills, and we talk about that in the book too, how and what skills really translate well into this industry. And unfortunately, this industry doesn't really have a lot of curriculum worldwide. There's a little bit here and there. Sometimes it's an IT class or it's a coding or something. And so being able to translate that into the industry, those skills are taught, and they're taught on the job. They're taught in many cases on the fly.
Yeah.
Which I think really lends itself well to military practitioners, because that is one of the best qualities, is being able to think on your feet.
I think that that's the one thing that you can't really codify as well, is the pressure testing that we take when we're in the military, right? Think about this. I'm on a fast attack submarine. I don't think that you can't find this information if you Google it or look in the Book of Janes, but let's say it's a 25, 26 megawatt nuclear reactor that we put into a 360-foot tube and purposely sink in the water. And we have that partnered with a platform of weapons and high advanced technology. And we've never, we haven't had problems with nuclear submarines because of the attention to detail that we have. And that comes from hours and weeks and months of heavy training, consistent training. And what that does is it conditions our mind to think about things in a very default aggressive or proactive approach, to where we don't wait as much. And I'm sure that, your husband will tell you that he could sit in a room and you're not sizing people up or trying to sit there and, read the tea leaves on how everybody's defined, but based on the way that they present themselves, either with some sort of command presence or not, we could typically spot fellow veterans in a room, men or women, just based on maybe the confidence they have, knowing that, one of my co-founders said it best. He goes, look, this is an easy day. No one's shooting at me today. We're all going to go home. No one's stepping on an IED. No one has a threat or a risk to their life. We're not going to lose anybody today. And I discovered that, the industry, when I first got into it, really had a huge appetite for technology backgrounds. And what I've learned is the military has the ability to offer damage controlmen, aviation boatswain's mates, MPs. I mean, it doesn't matter what your rate is, you can still contribute and bring value. And I think that it's our job as veterans, using platforms like yours and the book that you wrote, which I'm really excited to read, and podcasts like the one that we created, even the conference that we created, it's our responsibility. I mean, we are our brother and sister's keeper. That's one of the things they teach you when you're in the military. So if not us, then who? And it's my job to help build a bridge that takes it from the community I was born and raised in, which is the veteran community, and create a bridge to the mission critical vertical, which is the industry that's created my entire life since the military. Most of my best friends are in this industry. I've learned and developed professionally because of the people in this industry that decided that they would invest into my success and my future. And I mean, it's very much like the military without some of the hardcore training and discipline that's pounded into us, in the first, 3 or 4 months when everyone joins and gets in the military. I mean, they strip you down and then build you back up to where you're part of a unit. You're no longer an individual. And with that, you learn a little bit more about the failings of the Spartan community and how important it is to protect the people to your left and right. And your agility to grow and your ability to grow is dependent upon, the strength of the unit. So some groups get it. Those that don't eventually falter anyway. And we see that in the space, but those that do get it are the ones that are thriving, I think, the most. And we want to help transition veterans that are leaving and aren't sure what they want to do. We want to bring awareness to them and educate them on what's available out there outside of manufacturing or retail or automotive or finance or high tech or energy or whatever. There's so many verticals, but if you trace where these veterans start from, whether they come out of college or they come out of high school, they pick a branch of service much like they would pick a vertical of industry. And they follow that based on the passion that they have. Like, I knew that I loved submarine movies and I wanted to be in the submarine community. I identified as that. And
me, on the other hand, I'm claustrophobic. And if you told me I had to go in a submarine, I'd probably have a heart attack. I took a tour of one. They're tiny little things.
It takes a little bit of time, for you to get used to working in super confined spaces. But it's one of those things that, we all started from somewhere. So believe it or not, I'd say 9 out of 10 of submariners I ever met would tell you, I'm claustrophobic as hell. I don't want to be here. But they love the mission. They love the purpose of the mission. They love the command. And they love the people they serve with. So they're going to suffer those inconveniences. And it's a decision that they made, right? So most people that join the military don't do it because they're looking for the comfort spot or the easy thing. They're doing it because they want to be disruptive. They want to be a change agent. They want to be significant, drive change, and be a part of something special. And they're willing to suffer those inconveniences to do it. And I think the thing that we have to identify and really embrace is a lot of those people that leave the military. Let's be honest, they didn't join the military to make money. They did it to make a difference. And when they get out of the military, some will be coin operated. They're going to be going out there trying to figure out how they can commoditize themselves and go to the highest bidder. And that's okay too. Everyone's in a different part in their life. But most people are doing it because they want to go be significant again. And they want to go find a job that will give them a good balance and a good quality of life. And, the military is good on doing what's called left seat, right seat training. Doesn't matter what branch of service you're in. When you show up, you get your primary duties, and then your collateral duty is to either begin to learn the job of the person above you or to start teaching your job to the person below you. But either way, you're going to be constantly in this state of growth and development, and they're going to be pushing you to advance through your career. And I think that if we can help those that are leaving the military that want to be back in a climate or an environment or a culture that allows that to happen, to where, one, they're either inspired by what they're doing or who they're working with, and they feel safe in that environment. Like, you don't feel safe on a fast attack submarine on a 6-month deployment.
Clearly.
But you feel safe from the dangers and the risks that you have to deal with and live with and tolerate on a daily basis on a submarine. But the threats that submarine really faces, they all really come from outside the ship, because everybody inside the ship is singing from the same sheet of music, and they are all focused on the same mission, the same objective. And the threats, for these people to feel safe in corporate America, they need to know that the people that they work for are going to block and tackle for them. And they're not going to, when they fail, just hang the mistake around their neck and let them suffer. They want to be inspired. They want to feel safe politically, and then they want to be fulfilled by what they're doing. And if they do that, they're going to suffer an inconvenience on what their overall total earning potential is, because they're going to think about it in the long term. And I'm not suggesting that we should go out and pay veterans anything less than, they should be paid proportionate to the value they bring, but they're not going to be going to the highest bidder. And because if you could find an opportunity that aligns with these veterans and it's a meaningful purpose that they could get behind, they're going to do it, and they're going to do it at a rate that probably pencils out more economically efficiently than what someone that has 10 years of experience is in this industry and is just trying to go to the highest bidder and figure out a way to make more money every incremental move.
That's a big argument, with a lot of these kids that are starting out in the industry, and the new talent is that they're so laden with college debt that they absolutely jump ship. When I started in this industry, if you worked someplace more than 3 years, people want to know what the heck was wrong with you. Yeah. Because it was developing so fast, and a year experience became worth a lot of money. 2 years experience became a lot of money. And so, if you stayed at your company with a 3% raise, you were making 20, 30,000 less than you could if you jumped ship. And 100%. So it became this constant culture of train, leave, train, leave, train, leave, train, leave. And I think there's a dedication that comes with the military attitude that a lot of people don't give credit for. But also there's a huge diversity in the way that you approach a problem or a situation, right? And I think that what we're losing a lot of in this industry by trying to force everybody to have a 4-year degree, we're taking away their diversity. We're saying, okay, we want everybody to learn this way. And then when we go to write a piece of code, everybody's going to know only this way. And that's the way we're going to do it. Whereas if you had somebody that came in from a military background or a non-education self-taught background or a trade or a similar industry, they're going to think things differently, like the tradespeople. They're used to just reach and get it and fix it and make it work. And college kids may want to have that analysis paralysis. And so talk to us a little bit about, when you did transition and you came into the private sector, and, what was that transition like? What skills did you learn in the military that were extremely helpful? What were some of the challenges you had, and how did you overcome those?
Yeah. It's probably unique for each veteran transitioning, but I think that if I had to codify myself, it would be, I came from an intense environment where we were never very affable, right? We don't vacillate over things very often. And that sounds crazy because it's a complicated technical environment with a lot of dangers and
not a lot of downtime.
Right. And what happens is we talk fast, we move fast, we're trained to be extremely deliberate and extremely decisive, because in many cases, the decisions we have to make are often put on us where we don't have all the information that we want to make a really great decision sometimes, but sometimes we have to operate from our gut. And when we move like that, it's counterintuitive, right? I'll tell you the differences. For my biggest challenge was in the way that I engaged with people. My communication style and method is easily viewed as, it could be abrasive to some, just based on the energy level we put into things. There's urgency in everything we do. And we do that because of the life and death situations that we're placed in, sometimes on a ship or a submarine. But it's no different than, combat infantry soldiers that are going around. And I've learned that infantry in many cases are the best for contracting type roles, contractors, subcontractors, trades, general contractors, because every construction program with the densities of the MEP that we build at and the volume and the velocity that we build at, I mean, we know that the 3 top KPIs in this vertical are safety, schedule, and budget. And speed to market is the number one product that's being sold today. It's all about available inventory.
Sure.
And for us, what you have is really intense environment that never goes as planned, right? And Mike Tyson had a very famous quote. He's like, everyone had a plan to box me until I punched him once in the face. And on these construction programs, you do so much of them, you get proficient. And we used to think that experience, and I'm not trivializing experience, in my opinion, is only as good as the failures you've made in the past, because you get the critical coping skills to learn how to deal with, overcoming adversity and challenges, and, pivoting hard when you make decisions that are wrong, and then, rotating back into a way in which you're back on the right path. Those things are very important because those are lessons learned. Those scars that callous the brain are the values.
Well, too.
But that's what you learn. but that's what you learn, right? And what we want is experience, but we don't necessarily need experience on means and methods. We need experience on overcoming challenges and adversity and communicating objectively in a highly volatile situation like some of these construction projects have. And I think the value of experience ends at that, because the way that we build data centers today is not the same way that we did a year ago or 2 years ago. And it's not going to be the same as how we're going to build them in a year from now or 2 years from now either. So the experience and means and methods is about as good as, and it lives about as long as a banana. But the experience gained in the pressure testing that you get from the military is profound. And for me, the greatest challenge I had was coming out and then trying to operate at that same altitude and airspeed. That's typically pretty high speed, low drag in the military, because you never have as many resources it feels like you need. So you got to get really creative to overcome, and adapt to challenges on a daily. And those things are valuable. But when you do that and you transition that into the military, my biggest challenge is I was probably, I would guess, too aggressive, or I would move too fast. And people were constantly like, slow down the way you talk, slow down the way you think, slow down in everything you do. And I'll tell you the difference is, in the military, the primary product in the military is people. It's the human resource. Yes, we have advanced weapons and technology, but they still got to be, they're managed and operated by humans. And the human in the military is the primary source of value. It is the primary source of hope. But in the civilian sector, it's the opposite. Like, you could talk to an HR department and they'll tell you like the greatest threats you have to your business are going to be from the people that you hire. That, if they fail, they can bring the company down, or if there's an HR violation or some sort of something, then, they're suing the company and
data leaks.
Yeah, but they look at, the optics, the way that the companies in corporate America, or the civilian fleet, we call it, look at their employees. It sometimes is the greatest risk to their business is their employees. Whereas in the military, the greatest asset to your unit is the people, right? Whereas it's a completely separate model. It's a completely opposite model between the military mindset and the civilian mindset. So when you transition into the civilian fleet, one of the things that I do is I coach, I talk to veterans every day, and we have the purpose of our business is to help support the veteran community, where, we have what's called the Overwatch task force, which is dedicated to just supporting our efforts and bridging the gap between the veteran community in transition and this industry that, I have the same statistics and models that you've probably seen, but our industry in the next 3 years is set to be short more than 250,000 people to support the growth within their industry. So how do you take people that, followed their passion and picked a vertical of industry in the military by literally selecting a branch? Each branch of service has a different objective, and each branch of service has a different value that they bring people. Some, the Air Force and the Navy are very high tech, very advanced technology, from satellites and space and, aviation platforms. And the Navy has, the nuclear Navy, and they got advanced, technology as well. But some of those branches, like the Army and the Marine Corps, are exceptional at creating more leaders, not just people that can give orders, but those that could follow them exceptionally well. And those are the ones that are pressure tested, because in the mission critical space, we measure the success. Mission critical is measured in downtime, where in the military, mission critical is measured in mortality, right? So we embrace these pressures that come with it, but then we have to adapt. We have to learn how to shift down into slower gears in the way that we think, in the way that we talk, in the way that we act, so that those that are around us aren't offset or uneasy in the way that we engage with them, because we are more intense, right? So how do you take career people that have been conditioned in the military for 20 plus years, and you convince them like, hey, when you transition, these people are looking for your leadership capabilities. They're looking for your ability to speak truth to power. You got to manage up just as effectively as you manage down. And yes, you may not know what a data center is, but half the people in this space don't know how to explain what they do for a living, or even know how to describe what a data center is. So the beauty about what we do is it's all based on our education platform in this industry is really based on immersion. You're writing a book now, and there's not a lot of books about data centers. So thank you for being a pioneer and blazing a trail, not just for women, but for veterans and for people coming from the trades, or anybody that just simply doesn't know what the data center is. But there are a lot of people growing disenchanted in what they do. And those could be people like me that are in college for a year or two and are like, what am I doing here? This is not for me. Now, I did get out and I finished school when I was done, because the homogenous environment or society that we are in is conditioned to where to be in certain, areas of management or leadership, you have to have a college degree. And now we're learning that, there are many industry thought leaders who are like, maybe the college degree should be pivoted back towards like a model that's similar to the trades, where you have an apprentice model and then you have a journeyman model or a master model. But what's the point of learning technology in college today, where when you start your freshman year, by the time you graduate, all that technology is obsolete and outdated anyway?
Exactly.
Right? So now we need people that can adapt and pivot and rotate and evolve. And those left seat, right seat trained people that come out of the military are conditioned to lean forward and to race towards challenge and conflict, while others are really more conditioned to race away from that. We thrive in environments where you could only be successful if you're comfortable being uncomfortable, where some people are like, when I'm uncomfortable, I have to shift away from that model and take me back into a space in which I am. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah. And we'll certainly put links to Overwatch and some of these resources in the description of this podcast for anybody that wants to get in touch with you and work to transition out of the military. Let's pivot a little bit and chat about the DC anti-conference, DCAC. What prompted you to start that, and give us a little insight there?
Yeah, fair question. So I, like you, have been in the space for a while, and I've had the opportunity to attend about every conference in this industry, right? And I think it was in 2015 I started, the data center season kind of opens up. There's like a 4-month window in which it's just like plow, plow, plow. And I went to DCD, New York, and then I went to one in Chicago, and then I went to a conference in Dallas, and then I went to one in Phoenix, and I went to one in San Francisco. And by the time I finished in San Francisco, what I realized was most of the speakers were the same. Most of the topics were the same. And it was, 70% of the conference was really vendors getting up there talking about the new flux capacitor they made, or the new widget they rolled out with, or the new software they have. And I said, hey, listen, I'm not gaining anything from these conferences outside of the networking. So people started not even attending the conference. They were like lounge lizards is what it was called, right? Where
Periphery.
You're like, look, how many people go to a conference like a 7x24 at the JW, and they rent a room and they hang out in the lobby bar and they network with everybody there, but they don't even have a pass to go in. There's some people that do. Some of the conferences used to be pretty strict on who could attend their conferences too. They're like, well, if you have a title of this, you can't come. And I was like,
yeah, there's a lot of them that still do that, actually.
But it made no sense to me. So I'm like, well, look, there's a lot of people doing a lot of things in this space, and I'm not hearing from them. I'm hearing from the same speakers at every conference, and they're talking about the exact same things. And there's not much being talked about from enterprise end users or operators. And those are the people that are making the largest purchasing decisions. They represent 80% of the capital market spend. So I'm like, why is the ecosystem talking about their widgets to these other audiences? Like, why would Schneider or Vertiv or Eaton or those other groups get up there and talk about their stuff when most of the people that are listening are people that also build the same type of stuff, right? So I said, with this industry, it doesn't need another conference. It just needed a better one. And I was like, it needs to be something that has a stronger purpose. So that was in 2014. So in 2015, on a napkin with some other people at a bar in San Francisco, I was like,
all the great decisions made at a bar on a napkin.
Yes. And I said, why don't we just make an anti-conference, like data center anti-conference? And someone's like, yeah, you could call it DCAC. And, obviously it's a play on the phrase ACDC, and we used, their play on their logo, the band, which is one of my favorites growing up. And I said, hey man, if we do this in Austin and we do it in an environment that's more vibrant, we could create an atmosphere that allows for a greater exchange of ideas. And not only that, but I think that we should open it up to everybody. It could be inclusive for anybody to attend that conference. Doesn't matter how long you've been in the industry or what your rank is. And it needs to be affordable. We always do a golf tournament day one, and it's a charity golf event. And all those proceeds go directly to a 501c3 that we pick each year that is going to help contribute to the veteran community in some form or fashion. Traditionally, it's in providing them resources to reduce the suicide rate, or, getting them through rehab, or helping them struggle, or get through the struggles of PTSD. We were just trying to be like the island of misfit toys. We just knew it had to be different. And we played with it. We just we tinker with it. We don't do it to make money. We do it to make a difference. So I lower the price for tickets to where it's the cheapest conference to attend. Every dollar that we typically bring in, we put it back into creating a stronger, healthier, or more vibrant environment. I'm really excited about next year because we're going to be shifting locations, and then we're going to be making it a much more interactive environment to where the audience could interact with speakers in real time with tweets and messages that they could ask questions on, and it'll be floating in the background where these people that are thought leaders can answer questions directly from people that typically don't feel comfortable enough raising their hand and speaking in a large forum. I mean, you have these visionaries with big fat brains that get on these stages and they talk about these amazing things they want to do, and they could have the greatest ideas ever, but they're not going to bring those ideas to life without the ecosystem coming together. You still need architects and engineers. You still need tradesmen. You need contractors. You need equipment manufacturers. And right now, the biggest struggle that we see in the industry is in 3 years from now, a projection of a shortfall of, 250,000 people. And when you have, 2,000 people leaving the military every month, up to 2,500 people leaving the military every month, that's a large group of talented people that is an untapped talent base to solve that problem. So we could solve the existential threat of the industry by educating more veterans that there's opportunities here that they've never heard of because they've never heard of data centers. And then we can help reduce the suicide rate amongst the veteran communities because we are giving them the opportunity to have more meaningful jobs of significance and purpose. So that conference was just a platform for us to help the veteran community. Like this year, we wrote checks for $60,000 for four different veteran groups. That conference was more of like David versus Goliath for us, to where we were like, forget all these big conferences that don't let you in, and their barrier to get in is because they're too expensive or your title's wrong. Let's make one where everyone can come in, and let's make it to where it's fun, where everybody's accessible. And I think that if you create an environment that allows for a better exchange of those topics and those ideas and more discussions, then we can advance the industry forward. And we're going to be expanding next year with more DCAC type conferences, but a couple of them, we're only going to have one tech conference a year like we always do in Austin, but we'll have conferences that include, a DCAC event at Naval Station San Diego in March next year, where, day one will be a charity golf event. People want to sponsor, they get a foursome, they only get 3 tickets. That fourth one goes to a veteran that'll golf with them. And we'll do, a concert that night. And the next day is a hiring conference where we'll all have, 100 to 200 pre-screened veterans that are going to be sitting there, all within 30, 60, 90 days of getting out of the military. And they're just looking for a new purpose. And now we can marry these companies that need talent with these veterans.
Well, and I think that's huge. I think the options have to be there. And I think people have to know what the industry is, which is part of the reason I wrote that book. I mean, it's 200 pages. That's what it's designed for. You want a synopsis of how it all goes together. It's a kickstart. And I think we're missing some of that. I think, when I was looking before I wrote that book, there's a couple 800-page books that nobody's going to digest in a weekend before they go on a job interview, right? And I think just being able to highlight the industry, it gets people thinking, right? I've always thought we kind of do things backwards. Like, if you're going to interview somebody for the industry, why not give them all the tools about you, then interview them, right? Because you as a person know enough to ask an intelligent question. You know enough to have some critical thinking about projects they're working on and ways that you can jump in and help. But how do you do that if you know nothing? Like, reading their webpage is not going to get that for you. And so with this, this whole industry, we are unknown for the most part. And I think that is a big burden. So good for you for doing all that. I think it'll definitely be helpful.
Well, good for you for not only having a podcast platform that allows you to reach a broader audience. Thank you for writing a book. I mean, we created a podcast platform as well at the beginning of this year. And it was because what I learned is that I had limited reach with the DCAC live conference. A podcast, like our podcast is, we have industry thought leaders on, and we bring on veterans too. Sometimes they're industry thought leaders that happen to also be veterans. And we do the podcast and we point it directly to these Navy bases and these Army bases and these Air Force bases and these Marine Corps bases where we have contacts. We're like, spread this podcast to all the TAP advisors. Like I was on the phone yesterday with a Master Chief at Naval Station San Diego who had me on speakerphone talking to a TAP class, which is the Transition Assistance Program for the military. No one gets out of the military, regardless of your branch, unless you go through TAP school. It's typically like 3 days where you have people talking to you about your VA benefits and what are out there for you, and what to look for, and how to write a resume, how to write a LinkedIn, how to those are tools that we need. But if I could send a podcast to the fleet, and you have a series of Master Chiefs and Command Master Chiefs that all come together and distribute that down to their sailors and soldiers and airmen, then what we do is we get to use that vehicle to have a wider reach. And your podcast will allow us to do the same. And the more that we could reach, the more of us that will come together. There's a Carrie, there's a Kirk, and there's about a dozen more of us out there that all share the same mission and the same purpose. And our hearts are dedicated to helping others. But no matter how good we can do individually, it's not as good as we can do if we all work together. And that's what's lacking, is that collective, right? So the chorus always seems louder than the soloist. So I think it's up to, to us to rally around each other, which is why I'm like, Carrie, I bought 15 of your books. Every person I know that's going to be like entertaining the space, I'm going to give them a book and be like, read this. It's not that long to read. I do think that the book is the first step, but I think that we have to arrive at another destination, which is, sadly, we live in an environment where we live in excess consumption, right? We have these computers in our hands, 90% of the day, and we get a lot of our information from that, right? Which is, I think podcasts are a really great place to get meat and potato type of knowledge, because it's unfiltered through traditional media sources. So you get to hear directly from these people that are thought matter or subject matter experts. That's why I asked him, like, we got to get you to get that audiobook where you are saying it out loud. Reading books these days is almost like a luxury reward that we give ourselves on a weekend. It's not something we get to do all the time, but listening to a podcast while driving instead of music is an alternative to educate ourselves in parallel to what we're doing.
Yeah. And I think we are very much a multitask society these days. And I think too, as we attract the younger audience and certainly build those on-ramps into the industry, we have to reach people where they live. And throwing a book at somebody is not always the best way to do that.
I agree. You just got to throw everything at it. But I think that what's really lacking is that collective. Like, if we could find a platform that allows us to harness you and what you do, and us and the other amazing people that are out there, like Lee Kirby, or there's other people that
absolutely
a part of their purpose is helping veterans too. And if we could just bring that together, we could figure out a way to go maybe wider or deeper into those bases. And there will be a time where we hit a tipping point, right? Where all of them are going to be like, why am I not doing this now? And you got guys like, Tony Grayson, former submarine commanders that are.
He's a great guy. He's done this podcast too, by the way.
Awesome guy. He's done mine as well, right? But he is a huge supporter of veteran stuff, and he's a legend in the submarine space. I mean, so I do think that those people that are in the military, now is the time to get those people the books. Let them take that book on their next 3-month deployment. And when they come back, they're going to be biting down the bit to figure out, like, oh my God, I had no idea this world even existed. Not only is there more opportunities of growing, because the JLL report that they presented at DCAC this year was that the compound annual growth rate for this vertical is at 23.6% still. Doesn't matter where you get that rate. We're still growing at a double-digit rate. So the thing is, the industry's growing while other industries continue to recede, and every other vertical of industry is dependent on what we do. You could be in a hospital, it could be e-commerce, metaverse. None of it exists without technology, compute platforms, and those things are just data centers. The cloud just means someone else's data center. So we have to go build more data center to support the adoption rate of these technologies. It's us, the consumers, with the eyeball content, video caching, and uploads and downloads and e-commerce and all the things that we do. We're the ones that are driving this, and we're the only ones that are holding us up too at the same time.
Well, we are bumping up on about our time limit. So if you wanted to, thank you, by the way, for being here. If you want to leave somebody with some quick parting thoughts or a message or a place to listen to your podcast where they can also get some help drop it on us.
Yeah. Well, first, Carrie, I'm super honored to be speaking with you. I've been lucky enough to have you speak on, the panels at DCAC before, and you've always been so supportive of everything we've done, and we support everything you're doing too, especially with this new book and the podcast that you have. So thanks for giving me the privilege to be here with you. I am truly honored. The thing that I would say is, if you're listening to this, there's a good chance that you're either looking to get into the space or you're already in the space. The good news is where you start is never going to be the same as where you finish. Just get into the industry. And then once you're here, figure out what the best spot is for you. There's a really wide ecosystem of opportunities, from architects to engineers to contractors and construction management people to people that are manufacturing equipment and people that commission the data centers. And then there's those that have to operate it. So just like any other vertical of industry, take the same approach you had, right? You joined the military because you followed your passion. When you are leaving the military, follow your passion. Go find a purpose. Don't work for just money. Go work in an opportunity that you get to continue to grow and develop, and go find someone that wants to put you in a position where you could effectively drive change. And if you're a civilian counterpart, you don't have to be military to have PTSD. We're here to support them too. And if you're in this space and you're unhappy or you're disenchanted with what you're doing, the good news is there's a million opportunities. There's literally unlimited opportunities in this space. You just have to reach out and ask questions. And if they don't reach out to you, Carrie, they could reach out to us. They could find us on, weareoverwatch.com. They could find us on our podcast, DCAC Revolution. They could find us on the conference, DCAC Live or DCAC-Live, or they could find me on LinkedIn, Kirk Offel. And I have a 7-person recruiting team that all they do is help transition veterans coming out, and we're placing, right now 30 to 40, veterans a month, and we're trying to get that number up higher. So we're here to help. We're here to help anybody that wants to grow their career within this industry.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kirk. And for those of you that are listening, we look forward to you listening to another edition of our podcast series. Thanks for your time.